Here we go.
Can we start now?
Ready.
I'll wait for McCoy to sit down.
Councilman? Good evening.
I hope we're live.
I rise up like Iron Mike Tyson.
I call to order the special city council meeting of December 10th. The time is 6:02 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Ronnie Felder. Chairperson Julia Botel.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Douglas Lawson.
Here.
Councilperson Chadrick McCoy.
Here.
Councilperson Shirley Lanier. Councilperson Shirley Lanier.
Councilperson Shirley Lanier. I know she's there.
Councilperson Kashamba Miller Anderson.
Present.
City Manager Jonathan Evans.
Present.
City Clerk Claudine Anthony is present. City Attorney Don Nguyen. Here. May proceed.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Miller Anderson. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions on the agenda?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
Okay, I would like to suggest that we add ordinances number 4156 and 4157 to this agenda and thereby obviate the need to have another meeting tomorrow night. Could we take a vote on doing that?
Madam Chair,
What?
I was always under the impression during special meetings we could not add anything on, particularly since we advertised it for tomorrow. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be here tomorrow either, but
Okay.
I don't know if Don, or am I correct on that? Typically, whatever you advertise for the special meeting, that's what you have to stick with. You don't usually add anything. You can delete.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there is a provision in Resolution number 26-02 that states that you can add other business to a special meeting agenda if it is approved by unanimous consent
During the
of
special
all
meeting?
of those present.
For the
Yes.
special
Okay.
meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we do.
I'm going to respond. So, Ms. Nguyen, can I get your attention? I do not want to come to a meeting and find out some rule that nobody has ever heard before. When will somebody give us the rules? Because this is the first time this has ever been stated as long as I've ever been watching a city council meeting. So if there's rules, like the Saturday I missed, I found a resolution that said this resolution supersedes an ordinance. So I think what we should do when we leave here is make sure that everybody understands the rules to the game. No new resolutions and new rules popping up at the last minute. I share the same sentiments with Councilwoman Miller Anderson. I'm just a little aggravated that it seems that this place there's no function or structure nowhere in here. And I'm a little disappointed if somebody knew that beforehand and decided to bring it up only at the meeting. This seems like an ambush. Like, what are we doing? I came to this meeting expecting to deal with one item. Then I get introduced with a resolution that nobody on this board knew about. Like, what are we doing? Do we care about our time? Do we care about what matters? Do we care about the rules, or do we change them as we go?
We don't have to take this up. We have.
No, I'm speaking in general terms, Madam Chair. I'm a little upset with administration and legal and the clerk and whoever else is responsible because nobody up here has ever heard of that resolution before. And to sit here and do this on the fly when I have other commitments and then we get special meeting after special meeting, it's a little disingenuous to our time. You know, we stayed to 11 o'clock on Wednesday. Last week we stayed to 1:10 or 1:15. Can somebody help us out and make sure we get the right rules?
I don't have.
I'm speaking to the attorney.
Okay. Ms. Nguyen, you're recognized.
Mr. McCoy, I will work with the clerk and we will.
Well, I don't even see that it's a need for us to have a meeting if there are going to be rules and resolutions popping up out of the blind that nobody knew about. Not even the chairperson. Well, perhaps she did, but not even Councilwoman Miller Anderson. Do we even care about what matters? Or, I mean, come on, be a little courteous to what the members of this body have to go through. I went to a meeting yesterday, to a HOA that I stayed and took off from work and completely got canceled. Then we get to a meeting tonight, and now we're introducing a new rule that nobody's ever even heard of.
May I?
I yield.
Okay. My only concern was I wanted to try to not have to have a meeting tomorrow night.
I'm speaking of the process.
Okay.
And until they address the process, that's what I want to hear.
Okay.
Mr. McCoy, this is a resolution from 2002. None of us were here at that time. I have, because it was in my office when I took this office, a set of resolutions that govern the conduct of meetings here. I will work with the clerk to make sure that all of you get a copy of these.
Well, I don't think we just need to adopt any agenda because I'm not ready for somebody else to introduce another rule or something else that's completely arbitrary. It's like, this sounds like some sort of kangaroo court.
And Mr. McCoy, again, as I stated, this resolution requires a unanimous vote. Therefore,
It doesn't matter if it requires a majority. What I'm saying to you is you're putting us in the game and now you're telling us the rules now. This is a kangaroo court.
Madam Chair?
I'm going to withdraw my attempt to add these items. We'll just meet tomorrow night. Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second to adopt the agenda? Councilwoman Lanier, will you make a second to adopt the agenda?
Is she on?
I second. Madam Clerk?
Point of parliamentary entry. Is there a specific page you're going to point to in that book that allows you to make the second?
We had this discussion at the
So
training.
you can't point to it.
We had this discussion at the training we had, and it was
Okay,
covered.
but not in the book, not in the actual manual.
Let me see if
Or maybe somebody's going to surprise and tell me another rule that we had adopted that nobody knew
We
about.
discussed this at the training we had, that the chair could in fact second a motion, and I'm going to see if I can find it.
And then even more, we got a council person that's calling for a special meeting that don't even show up.
She's here. She's been here. I was speaking with her before the meeting. They've lost the connection, so she's here. Let's see if I can find it, unless somebody else wants to attest to the fact that we learned this at our training.
We did.
We did, okay, we
I
did.
can't point to it in the book, though.
I'm looking for it. Well, I can't find it, but we had it, I mean, I could take the time to
So
find it.
absent of any kind of authoritative source, then I don't think you can make
All right, let me find it. Let me find it. Madam Clerk, would you be looking at the same time, please?
This is no different than the fight that started in the back. There's no kind of rules in this place.
We covered this in our training, and it was made clear to us that the chair could second a motion. I don't know that I can find it right away, and if we want to sit here all night figuring it out, we can, but let's see.
Is there any transmittal from the mayor, city administration regarding the vetoes? Was there any comments or particular reference or memorandums as to these items that were vetoed?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
There was no correspondence that was provided to administration or legal with regards to the veto. It was just written on the document that the mayor executed.
Well, this says another, this, on page 29, it says, another member seconds the motion, and the chair is a fully functional member of the body. It doesn't specify in this chapter that a chair can second, but again, this is the training that we had, and unless, Councilwoman Lanier, you're here. Would you second the motion, please, if you chose to do so? Did she second? Okay, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy?
No.
Councilperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier?
She said, yeah, I think she said, yeah.
Was that a yes, Walter? Can you hear her? It was a yes. Go ahead.
Pro Tem Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. The agenda is adopted by a vote of 4-1. Are there any, there is no consent agenda. Are there any disclosures from the council? I don't see any. We can move right to, let's see, please be reminded that the City Council has adopted rules of decorum, public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the entrance of the hall. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the council chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting and or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comments shall begin at 7:30 p.m. unless there is no further business of the City Council, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if an item is being considered at 7:30 p.m., then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comments, please fill out, please fill out, my page is missing, sorry. Please fill out a comment card located on the table. Thank you. Madam Clerk, ordinance number one, item number 1.
Ordinance number 4155, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, providing for the submission to the electors the proposed amendment to the city charter in accordance with section 166.031 Florida statutes, submitting proposed charter amendment concerning deleting requirement that 50% of all street and secondary drainage improvements shall be paid by the benefited property owner, and that council may determine the assessments for curbs, gutters, valley gutters, and sidewalks, and calling a special election on the proposed amendment to the city charter to be held in conjunction with the regular city council election on Tuesday, the 9th day of March 2021, providing notice of special election, providing for balloting and election procedures, providing for inclusion in the charter, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have any public comments on this item. The acceptance of public comments on this item is now closed.
Thank you.
I move that we approve ordinance number 4155.
Thank you. Would someone care to second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any presentation? I presume not, since we've already addressed this. Do we, Mr. City Manager?
No, Madam Chair, unless the board needs an additional presentation, there's no presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Staff.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Go ahead.
You recognize Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, as stated previously, my comments were that we need to educate and update our residents on this ordinance that we're attempting to change. We say that we want to give community participation, but no community charrettes have been held to discuss this ordinance change. This was not presented from a charter review committee. This was brought together and brought to us by staff. So I have a series of questions that I want to ask to staff prior to us moving forward. But my concerns, and I want to go on the record, are that we're going into the holidays. We've experienced a pandemic that this country has never experienced in the last 100 years. And the county is potentially heading into another potential shutdown, which can also affect the ability to market and advertise to our residents. I believe it's absolutely...
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Lawson has the floor, Councilwoman Lanier.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure you guys can hear me. Sorry about that, Mr. Lawson.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
So moving forward with this ordinance, I believe is absolutely irresponsible of us to do that, because the fact that this hasn't been vetted with the community, nor have we had any community threats to discuss this ordinance, and we're going into a potential lockdown, I do not believe staff will have sufficient time between now and March to get this information out. I want to go on the record and state to every resident that I am not inclined or supportive of an additional tax on our residents. I want to be clear, because somehow from either staff or on this dais, it got out to a resident that I was supportive of an additional tax on the Singer Island bridges. I want that to be clear that I'm not supporting an additional tax. I want this ordinance to pass. There was a comparable ordinance that was read in 2008 that went to the ballot that did not pass. And that was due to the number of ordinances that were on the ballot and also not educating our residents on what they were voting for within a timely fashion. I believe that we have over 6 months to a year to take this out to the community and to update them on this process. The mayor vetoed these ordinances because of the rushed nature of this, and I'm supportive of the mayor's ability to do that. I do not support us rushing this ordinance onto the ballot when we have the ability of other options. So my series of questions are going to start with Mr. Evans. Do we have an idea of what the financial impact is on the residents that are going to be affected by these properties in reference to any of the projects we've done over the last 6 months?
As it relates to the projects that have been done over the last 6 months, there has not been a calculation with regards to the fiscal impact per resident. Staff would have to do that calculation, but it's a provision that's been in the charter and hasn't been utilized since the 1980s.
Colleagues, we're voting on something that we don't know what the financial impact is. That's one. Whether we're adding an additional tax or not, we have no idea what we're voting on. So just to say we're not going to vote on it because we do not want to tax our residents is not fair because we don't know what we're voting on. That's number one. Madam Chair, I have a question for the city attorney.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Nguyen, is there any case law that supports us putting a freeze or moratorium on a section of this charter so that we don't implement this policy?
I haven't found any case law that discusses moratoriums on charter provisions. However, there is a recent case out of the city of West Palm Beach about 6 months ago, June of 2020, where West Palm Beach was not enforcing certain provisions of their zoning ordinance, and a citizen brought a lawsuit against them, and the citizen did not prevail because the court held that the enforcement of the provision by the city was discretionary. That case is on appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. The court accepted jurisdiction of that. But the significance of the case is that the lower court, the Fourth District Court of Appeals, held that the citizen that brought the claim had to show special damages that were different from anyone else suffered in the city as a whole, and that they were not able to show those special damages. So basically, the case holds that unless you can show special damages, you cannot bring an action against a successful action against the city to enforce certain codes unless those codes apply to health and safety.
Thank you, Attorney Nguyen. So, colleagues, to be clear, we have the ability to not enforce this portion of the charter and this ordinance be over the next 12 months, 6 months, whatever time frame we have, which gives us sufficient time to vet this item, which gives us sufficient time to complete our community charrettes, and which gives us sufficient time to make sure that this does pass on the ballot. We do not want this to go out there and this fail, and now we are obligated to be able to tax whatever residents would have this 50% taxation on the street work, road work, bridge work, gutter work that's being done. So I want to make sure that our residents are highly informed of exactly what they're voting on, to make sure we're completely updated and educated on what we're voting on, and we make the proper decision so that it gets done. And I would be supportive of it getting on the next ballot, which gives Mr. Evans and staff sufficient time to get all the information over to us. And then we can also get it out to the residents, not during a pandemic, not during a holiday season that's going to essentially cut off the next 4 to 6 weeks, which would give us 2 weeks of marketing to 35,000 residents. So I believe that we should either table this item or come back and revisit this item at a later date, which gives sufficient time to review this item. And I am not supportive of an additional tax. I'm not supportive of this being implemented, and if we can allow for this not to be enacted over the next 12 months, that'll avoid any other tax, whether it's any portion of the city of Riviera Beach. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, Commissioner Miller Anderson, you recognized.
No, I actually was going to ask a question regarding the reason for the mayor vetoing the item, and I guess I heard the answer already. So my comments towards the ordinance and my position hasn't changed from the other times that I've spoken. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, you're recognized, Commissioner Lanier.
I just wanted to say that I am in support of this ordinance. I think that it is a very simple, simple ordinance. What it is an ordinance that says, if we are going, for example, if we're going to repave your street, or we're going to repair the alleys behind your yard, that when the city spends this money to do this work, that we're going to come back and tax the residents 50% of that work. So if it's $5 or $7 or $70,000, half of that money has to come from residents. This is a ordinance that was placed in the charter. It has not been used, as the city manager has stated, since the 1980s. But as the city attorney alluded to, a resident has sued to enforce it, to say that if you come down where I live on 13th Street and you pave my road, I have to pay you 50%, and the residents on this road have to pay the city back 50% of them doing that work. And what this ordinance basically states is that the city won't do that. If we take this ordinance out of the charter, that means that the residents will not have to pay 50% for any road work, alley work, gutter work that is done in their neighborhoods. I thought this was and in fact, I thought this was the most simplest of the ordinances. That, I don't know anyone who lives in the city of Riviera Beach, who lives anywhere, who would be willing to pay 50% of any road work done on their road or in their neighborhood. I just don't see where residents would have an issue with, or even understanding. You either pay 50% or you don't. This ordinance says you don't, and it's just that simple. And I am in support of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy, do you have a statement or a question? Commissioner McCoy, do you have a question or a comment?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
I just want to make one comment.
Thank you.
I am very much in support of this ordinance being passed and having this put on the agenda 89 days from now. I think in 89 days, if we can't get the communication that needs to happen to this citizenry, then shame on us. I think that we have plenty of time to inform our citizens about the importance of removing this draconian rule from our charter. It just has to go, and it seems to me to be very simple, something that we can explain quite simply. Vote to remove this, and you will save yourself the headache of potentially someday being charged to have road work done in your neighborhood. Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The time frame, Mr. Evans, on when a marketing strategy is going to begin for these amendments if approved.
Madam Chair, with respect to the marketing for this, staff has already convened to discuss the marketing strategies associated with this. Legal is also involved in the discussions. We wanted the ordinances to pass before we then move forward with the implementation and the marketing strategy. And I made it abundantly clear to staff and all those involved, we want an award-winning marketing campaign. So we will do every and anything that we can to ensure that individuals are informed with regards to the information. We have talked about face-to-face community meetings. We have talked about...
Mr. Evans, I'm sorry, just the time frame, when it will begin.
As soon as this ordinance passes, if it does pass, staff begins the marketing strategies and putting together the items. So I would say we would start disseminating information probably in the next 7 to 10 days.
Okay. And Mr. Evans, with this item, is it possible to be used as a benefit or a tool for residents to come together and tackle any neighborhood improvements that they choose?
The way it's stated, if the residents conceivably wanted to come to the board and said that there's not a project that's budgeted for, but we wanted to have we wanted to have our project as a priority, they can conceivably point to that provision in the charter and say, well, then go ahead and execute the mechanism in the charter that says for you to assess us, the property owners that are deriving a benefit. So if residents conceivably wanted to have an improvement prioritized or have an improvement put forth that may not be budgeted for, that can be the mechanism that they can ask for the board to consider, as they would want to see some increased improvements. To that point, and when I've seen this particular type of mechanism utilized, it's utilized in a lot of coastal communities where dredging behind a person's homes is something that is done. And so there has been situations where those individuals that live on the island per se, and if there is canals that are back behind their property, and that is something that is outside of their responsibility. I've seen where in Sarasota County that individuals would ask the county to effectively assess them to assist in dredging around their docks and around the back of their home. So that's when I've seen this particular type of provision utilized in other situations. Mm-hmm. The challenging part with this particular item, it says shall. It doesn't say may, it says shall. And so that is consistent with every road project or projects associated with the items contained in the charter. It says that the board shall assess versus may. And that's probably a question for the attorney with respect to the case that's in litigation in West Palm. If it was incorporated in the charter, and if it's a shall versus a may, because there's obviously for legal scholars there's a difference.
Correct. And the type of work that could be assessed or supported by that community, we have outlined as road work, we have outlined as gutters. What other benefits would residents be able to take? Would decorative lighting, a seawall, would these be implemented in the potential of allowing for a taxation to assist with the cost?
Based on how it's written in the charter, it's exclusive to all streets, secondary drainage improvements to be paid by the property owners. So it doesn't go into anything more specific or anything broader than the items that I've just read off. So it's very exclusive to streets, drainage, and drainage improvements. It doesn't, and valley gutters and sidewalks and curbs. It doesn't get into hardscape or picnic benches or lighting, etc.
So being that it's so vague, Mr. Evans, and this charter provision, my concern, some of the updates that have been done in the coastal areas, I'm pretty sure that the argument could be made for certain repairs, renovations to areas that could impact condos, streets, roads. And this definitely could be looked at as a tool versus a hindrance to our residents. Because as you stated, if our comprehensive plan, if our roadwork plan doesn't have something or an item that a community wants to see brought to the table, this could be used as a benefit for them. And based upon the case law that's happening in West Palm, it's discretionary to the council. So we essentially could implement not charging this to our residents over the next 12 months. Because right now, a neighborhood could utilize this to pay for projects, underground work, utilities, if they choose. And now the example that the community may decide is either waiting for the city to repair it, which may be 5-10 years, or taking it upon themselves to say, hey, we want to make the improvements and have the assistance of the city to pay for the cost. So there's a lot of items that are kind of unclear with this ordinance, And for us to rush and put it on the ballot without having the proper information, I just cannot support it. One of the things I could support is changing the language from shall to may, because then that would clarify the confusion that Mr. Evans just stated. And if he's seen it being utilized in coastal communities, hell, this is a coastal community. What are we doing by rushing this item? Why is it so imperative that this gets on this ballot and we don't wait till August, November, or March of the following year? I just don't see what the rush is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
You're recognized, Mr. McCoy.
So, thank you, Ms. Nguyen, for indulging me for some clarification of the charter and the relating statute. But, what Councilman Lawson is suggesting, I'm not particularly convinced by. However, we're not in the stage at this point to make any modifications or amendments to the ordinances. That is already come and gone. Am I right, Ms.
That's correct.
Okay. And even more so, if that is true, then why do we have the clerk reading the title of the ordinance when it should have been a resolution? Because if you look at the charter says that the mayor's vote may be overridden by 4 votes in the affirmative. So we shouldn't be reciting the title of the ordinance again, because you're suggesting when you read the ordinance that this is a adoption of the ordinance. It should have been a resolution, because a resolution is an expression of the body. And if the expression according and inconsistent with the charter is that it may be overridden by 4 votes in the affirmative, we're not rewriting the law, nor are we reading this law on the 3rd reading. So it should have been titled as a resolution. Wouldn't that have been more appropriate than to basically name an ordinance again and read it by title, and just instead of saying a resolution overriding the veto? Because clearly what was read is not proper.
Madam Attorney, I think what Mr. McCoy is saying makes a great deal of sense to me. Should we withdraw the motion to accept the ordinance and make a different motion, and that would be a resolution to override the mayor's veto? Would that be your legal advice?
You can do it that way as well.
Okay. I think it was Councilwoman Miller Anderson who made the motion. Would you care to withdraw that motion, and then we'll make another one that, as Mr. McCoy suggests, would be to overturn the mayor's veto?
Override.
To override the mayor's veto.
Yes, that would be
Yes.
fine.
Councilwoman Lanier, would you accept that, withdraw your second?
Yes.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion that we override the mayor's veto of ordinance number 4155?
I move that we do what you just said.
Okay. Would you care to second again, Commissioner Lanier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to override the mayor's veto of ordinance number 4155. If you're in favor, please vote yes. If you're opposed, vote no. Madam Clerk?
Discussion.
Yes.
So, this is relative to the resolution, and my frustration is just because nobody knows what the heck is going on here, and I think that's pretty darn clear. For us to even be told that there's a resolution that can override the Constitution of the city is just preposterous. So for us to sit here and suggest that we were going to add something to a special meeting doesn't make sense. A resolution is an expression of the body. And I would much rather that we deal with these items just as they come. If we choose to override the mayor's veto, that's not an ordinance. That's an expression of the body. And I support overriding it. But what I heard this resolution from 2002 is preposterous, that you think a city council can create a resolution that overrides the very charter. If that is true, right? If that is very true, that we can create a resolution, which I guess our predecessors did, they created a resolution that basically conflicts directly with the charter. So if that's the case, we may as well create a resolution now to do exactly what Councilman Douglas Lawson said. So that resolution that was read by the attorney, and I'm saying this respectfully because I don't think that we really notice, but I just hate to get caught off guard with some surprising stuff, because if that's true, then Councilman Lawson might as well put a resolution on the floor to override what's in the charter. We can't override the charter with a resolution. We can't override the charter with an ordinance. So I yield back, and I'm still going to support this item, but I'm just a little frustrated that every day you come in here, somebody creates a rule. Just like the other time when I missed the Saturday parliamentary training, somebody presented a resolution that said that supersedes what's already written in the charter. We need to start and figure out what's going on. And perhaps it's going to be my recommendation that this is beyond the attorney, beyond the manager, beyond the deputy city manager, beyond the assistant city manager, beyond the city clerk, that somebody from the outside comes in and really offers assistance. It's a waste of time, and it's embarrassing to get in here and we don't even know the rules to the game. So I yield back.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk? If you are in favor of overturning the mayor's veto, please vote yes. If not, please vote no. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson,
No.
Chair Botel.
Yes, that motion passes 4-1. The mayor's veto is overturned. Now, I would like to discuss very briefly the meeting that we had set for tomorrow night. It strikes me that it may be the case that we don't even need to have it. Madam Clerk, could you please remind me, how did the vote go on ordinances number 4156 and 4157 when they were read for the second time? 4156 related to the ability for someone to file, to run for office, by getting signatures, by doing petition, and 4157 related to the city manager's ability to fire without just cause.
Madam Chair and members of the board, at the December 2nd meeting, when ordinance number 4156 and ordinance 4157 was presented to the board for second and final reading, the motion for both of those ordinances were approved with a 3-2 vote.
Okay, then I would like to withdraw my request to have a meeting tomorrow night.
So here we go again. This goes right back to the litany of problems that we have, because our charter doesn't speak to it only speaks to calling a meeting, but then, I don't know how you cancel a meeting. And it's nothing to you, Madam Chair. It's just like every day we're getting met with something that's a new rule. And quite honestly, when you dive down to it, it just doesn't seem that it even makes sense, or I don't know who signed off on legal sufficiency, but.
So how do I have to go about canceling my request for a meeting? Do I have to just put it in writing to the clerk? Does anybody know?
Well, I can tell you what, I won't show up.
There you
How's
have
that?
it. That would be the solution.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, in past experience, usually the way in which you called a meeting is the same way in which you would cancel a meeting. So you would just do the same action to reverse it.
All right, thank you. I'll email the clerk with my desire to cancel the meeting for tomorrow night. Do we have any comments by the city manager?
I have a question about.
I'm sorry,
what
you
just
recognize
talked
Commissioner
about.
Miller Anderson.
So you want to cancel the meeting because you feel there won't be a 4-1?
Yeah.
Or 5-0?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Somebody could have had a change of heart, but okay.
Well, Madam Chair, I guess I'm surprised, because when I look at this memo, at the background, it says ordinance number 4155 was passed on first reading 3-2, and then on second reading 4-1. I don't recall it that way, but it could have been. But maybe you can convince somebody with, your very convincing closing statements or something. I don't know, but
It's okay.
I won't be here for it.
It's okay. Do we have any comments or discussion by city manager?
Yes, Madam Chair, very briefly. With respect to the conversation that we had yesterday with the town of Lake Park, and then the continuation with respect to Marina Phase 2, I've been able to obtain the solicitation that was put out by the town of Lake Park, RFQ number 105-2020, and the way in which they formulated the request for services. I believe that there is a way that we can piggyback, for lack of better terms, the existing agreement to effectively look at the financial capabilities of the firm that has submitted for Marina Phase 2. The request statement of qualification is for consulting services to engage a consultant experience in public-private P3 mixed-use development, to advertise, prepare, develop, manage a P3 agreement with a developer for a marina-related mixed-use development located in the town of Lake Park and Lake Park Marina area. So I believe, and based on staff's preliminary review, and it's a 267-page document that I'll be reading this evening, I think there's elements contained in this based on the RFQ that we can look to possibly bring something for the board to consider in the next, at your next meeting, or at least your first meeting in January.
Thank you. Any comments by City Attorney?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Comments by the Mayor and City Council, starting with Commissioner Lanier. Any comments?
No, I have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy?
So, Madam Chair and Madam Attorney, this portion of the, of the chairperson making a motion or making a second, can we have that defined and clearly delineated? And, more importantly, I had to go out of town unexpectedly, so I couldn't participate in the parliamentary training, but, I think parliamentary training is just probably the smallest of our problems. We seem to have some resolutions that seem to conflict or outright go against our very charter. So I don't understand how that's possible, Ms. Wynn, that resolution that you started off reading in 2002 can even be something that could be, I don't know. And we need some clarification. So can you point us in the right direction when it comes to that resolution and its effect on what's the plain language of the charter? Furthermore, I did take a look at, I haven't been through all of the parliamentary training from that Saturday, but much of what I've seen, we don't do in our meetings. And I haven't been through it all, but I'm just a little frustrated that we get hit with new rules every time we come in. And even as I had the private conversation with Ms. Wynn, she said about, some of these things would have been discussed in your onboarding when we came on as council members. You can't really expect or want us to participate in meetings that are called at the last minute, 24 hours in advance. And much of this stuff that we're discussing, right, revolves around parliamentary training or rules of the city council when we don't really know what the rules are. I want to know if there's going to be a plan, Mr. Evans, to put all of those resolutions back online so I don't have to call in or particularly do a public records request and let one of my fellow council members know that I'm about to subpoena them that the charter provides, or let one of my council members know that I'm going to bring forth a resolution to suspend them because they haven't showed up at the required number of city council meetings. So can we get that stuff placed online? Because I do plan on invoking some of those privileges and rights that we have under the charter, and I just don't want it to be cut off by the manager sending what I believe is a strategy move by a member of this body to everybody and then let the cat out of the bag, because I'm thinking about suspending Councilman Lawson for a few things.
Hello?
Was that a state?
I want the resolutions. I want to know, do we get this stuff back online? That should have been ADA compliant.
City Manager, please.
Madam Chair, if I may, I know the city clerk's office is scanning those items and making them ADA compliant, and we'll make sure that the corresponding resolutions are placed on the website in a prominent place for folks to be able to see those.
Thank you. Any comments or comments, Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to make a comment that the ordinance that we passed tonight, I want our residents to understand that I'm very supportive of no taxation or additional taxation from this ordinance. What I wanted to see is I wanted to see a process put in place. I wanted to see that our staff was able to advertise and market this ordinance to our residents. And it's very discouraging to get feedback from the community that allegedly came from this dais and this staff that I'm supportive of an additional tax. It's difficult to continue to serve on this dais and be a support when your best interest is just trying to fight for the best interest of the community, because I just want to see this passed. I would like for us to continue to work together, and whoever is giving false information, and whatever residents is watching and not watching the full meetings and getting full insight and just taking the feel or the perception of one person's opinion, please participate, residents. Please continue to watch these meetings. Please continue to see what's actually going on and continue to follow the work that we're doing, because as a city, we're trying to move forward. But I want my residents to understand that I'm going to continue to fight for what they believe in and what the needs are of all our residents, not just a select few. So I want to wish everyone a happy holiday, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller-Anderson?
I don't have any at this time.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, could we ask for a workshop to go over those rules and procedures and also the way we conduct our meetings? I know that we had the parliamentary procedure, but I think it would be a good idea, as Mr. McCoy suggests, that we have a workshop on the rules and procedures. Will you take care of that?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I don't know if you recall, but I did write a memorandum probably 6 months ago with respect to the agenda and the process and,
Yes.
and all that. And so we can have a comprehensive discussion as it relates to rules of decorum and the agenda process and the like, so we can be able to iron out any kinks, so there's a clear understanding and expectation with regards to moving things forward.
Thank you. I just had a couple of announcements I wanted to reiterate that I made last night as well. We're planning a community meeting next week. My legislative aide is working to select a date on which Chief Osgood and the city manager are available to meet at the Ambassador Center to discuss the police presence on the island. We will have an upcoming agenda item relating to a moratorium on floating structures to give us time to formulate a plan to react to an ordinance that's coming from the county in the very near future. And the All Things Marine webinar that we did was very successful, but I think many people might have either missed it or saw it and yet still have questions, and particularly I mean those people who live in the Sugar Sands area and those other areas that are facing the lagoon. So we'll be doing a special meeting again at the Ambassador Center so people can be there socially distanced but be there and present, that we will televise to discuss the managed mooring fields because there are so many questions. Any other comments or concerns?
Yes.
Yes, recognize.
I only want the rules. I didn't want another meeting. We have to have a meeting for a meeting and a workshop. Just give me the rules to the game. You send it to me by email. I read it at some point. You guys show up for the meeting. I watch like Commissioner Lanier is doing.
All right. If there's no other
Watch it.
agenda items, this meeting is adjourned.